garden friends. Violet and I are coming to you today on this beautiful Saturday. Yes, Violet actually slept this morning while we worked hard in the garden, and I'll show you what we got done today. And then we're just gonna sit and chat for a minute about the garden, about when it gets frustrating and you want to give up, or why you should get started in the first place, and why you should continue to work on it and get out there and harvest and weed and do all the things that can be frustrating and exhausting. Why it's worth it. I'll talk a little bit about frustrations that I've come across and kind of how I've gotten through them, and just what has kept me going all these years to produce all of this. I didn't start here, guys. Definitely didn't start here. I started with a container vegetable garden almost 14 years ago on the Navy base in Millington, Tennessee. And over the years have gotten to this point, and I'm still growing as a gardener. So I just want to sit down and have a little chat. I was thinking about this while I was getting ready today, about just the importance of encouraging other gardeners and kind of talking through the obstacles. But first, let's show you what we did out here today. Ready? Are you ready? Say hi. So this is what I call our west garden. It's kind of been our not our fall garden, our early spring garden. It housed all of our potatoes, cabbages. These are all the Brussels sprouts you're looking at. These are lettuces that have bolted, that I'm letting bolt, which means they're flowering. They're coming to a flower, and I'm going to try to collect seeds from them for the fall and for next year. So I've let those bolt. These are all of our sweet peppers over here, which are really, really having tons of heavy fruit underneath there, but we're not going to talk about those today. And then over there, you can see all my beautiful zinnias that I showed you guys, and what was supposed to be pole beans and ended up being one pole bean, which I think is hilarious. One pole bean right there, and a bunch of bush beans. I don't know how I managed to get those confused. But today we cleared out the rest of the potatoes that were in between the flowers and the fence. So you can see all the dirt in there. So we came out and got the last of the potatoes today. So one last harvest that I'm actually going to can and not put down in the cellar. I'm actually going to can those. So we have ready to go potatoes. Aren't those flowers beautiful? I can't stop looking at them. You're going to be hearing a lot of Violet. I thought it'd be fun to bring her out here, but she's going to be talking the whole time. Let's get going. In this garden and the garden behind me, which I'll show you in a second, is we finished harvesting. Well, got the rest of the beans from this. A bunch of beans in here, and really they've kind of stopped fruiting, so they look really healthy and like they could have a whole nother harvest, but there wasn't much on there today, so we'll see. And then we got the rest of the potatoes from over here and harvested all the corn from these corn husks right here. So potatoes, corn, and beans in this garden. And then I came through here and just started cleaning up these garden beds. It doesn't look like it, but I dug up all the dead plants and the weeds and turned it over. And I pulled out all the stuff I didn't need in here with these Brussels sprouts. So there were a bunch of beans and bolted cilantro. I just pulled all that stuff out. So the so the Brussels sprouts can just really kind of finish growing in here. And then of course I will harvest the seeds from these lettuces and pull those out. But I'm starting to kind of get this garden ready for the fall, to start coming out and planting some more fall plants and clearing out all those weeds. That's the next big project. Yeah, I'm getting ready for the fall garden. Baby girl was tired. I needed to lay down. Oh shoot. Oh, there's my I had an iced coffee out here and I couldn't think of where I put it. All right, so back to what I was talking about. I am really trying to start getting this garden over here ready for the fall. The east garden has so much in it. I doubt anything will be planted in here for the fall. This one will probably just be closed up once we've harvested from it. I'll let the chickens come in and clear it out, and then we'll cover it for the winter. This whole area right here is where my garlic and onions were, and it's just completely taken over by weeds. It's actually really pretty because it's got all this Queen Anne's lace in there, but I just don't foresee that I'll be using any of that for the fall garden. Just depends on how much space I need, and I won't really know that till I get in there and start planting, which I really want to do here in the next week or so. So I've got a lot of work to do, and there's still quite a bit in this garden over here. I've got all those Brussels sprouts and all the peppers and just flowers, and what else? I'm gonna let those corn stalks back there dry, and I'll use those for fall decorations, and then all those sunflowers back on the fence there. So, but this will be great for the fall garden plants, just because of how much I've already cleared out. This morning we were in here in the East Garden harvesting all the corn from these plants right here, and I'll take you and show you how much we got, but we got a pretty good amount of corn. I was happy. I definitely want to plant more in future years, but for this year we did well, and I look forward to using that. And there are actually still some husks in here that weren't quite ready, so they'll have a little bit more time. So I might still get another 10, I think, another 10 corn husks from this garden, but that was fun. That was fun coming out here and harvesting that with the kids. And we just, the tomatoes are really, there we go. The tomatoes are really just starting to take off. So we're probably getting like a handful of cherry tomatoes every day, which, you know, are gone in seconds. And I've harvested, I think, 4 bigger tomatoes, but they're really starting to blush. So I should be able to start getting a lot of tomatoes and peppers and tomatillas here in the next couple weeks, so that I can start putting those away, making salsa and sauce, tomato sauce, and some of those products. So I'm kind of taking a big breath before that big harvest, because I've been super busy with all the squash. I have a whole counter full, again, of squash in the house that I've got to put away before the tomatoes and the peppers start coming in. So it's keeping me busy, but I love it. I do love it. But let's go sit down and talk about the garden, and hang around for this, because I've talked to enough of you to know some of the frustrations that come with it, but also just that desire to really be able to have a big, beautiful, productive garden. I know that's why you guys are here, because that's something you want. So I feel like I'm a little bit of an expert in that area, and I have some wisdom to add. So let's go chat. Okay, so frustrations in the garden. I would say there's at least 3 or 4 that kind of come to mind when I'm thinking about what would keep someone from either starting gardening at all, or once you get going, continuing through the harvest, through the process of it to completion, right? Because I know that sometimes you have grand plans, you've started all these plants from seed, or even just bought starter plants from the nursery, which is totally fine. But then it gets really overwhelming around this point, you know, in July and into August, when the plants are huge, when the weeds have taken over, you can't keep up with the harvest. What do you do with all that zucchini? And so on and so forth. So I thought we would talk through a few of the points. And here's what I want to talk about. How do you find the time, especially if you work? How do you find the time? And also, even if you don't work and have kids, that kind of leads into the next point of doing it with kids. How do you do it with kids? Because it can be frustrating, but it can also be really fun. And that this year has been that, and I will go into that in a minute. And then also, just how do you keep up with the maintenance that comes with the gardening process? Because it is work. I'm not going to lie. It is definitely work, and you have to choose to put in that effort. But the reward is so great for so many reasons. Here are the things I'm going to talk about. It's great because of what you get. You get this amazing reward of food that you've grown for your family. And if you've done it without chemicals, then you've even grown a really healthy food with all the chemicals and the traveling across countries that you buy from the store. This is local food from your backyard that's so much healthier than anything you'll likely get at the store, right? There's the health benefits of being outside, getting your vitamin D for the year just from being outside a few hours a week, getting a tan. That's kind of nice too. But in all seriousness, being outside in the sunshine, in the fresh air, being in the dirt, being around plants and bugs and insects. As a nutritionist, if you didn't know I was a nutritionist, I'm a nutritionist. I can tell you the health benefits of gardening far outweigh any exercise program that you can invest in. I promise you. And that kind of leads into even the next point. It's so good for your body. It's just so good for your skin, for your bones, for your weight. This is the lightest I've been in 2 years. Now, granted, I had a baby and then I had to lose the baby weight. But even before the season, the summer before, I was probably the lightest I've ever been and the healthiest because I was outside, moving muscles, working in the sunshine, eating the food that we produce, this healthy food. So if you're just the health benefits alone are worth the effort that you're going to put into the garden. So let's talk about time. So yes, it absolutely takes time. If you start plants from seed, you have to plan. You have to plan ahead of time. When you're starting those seeds inside, generally that starts around January or February, depending on what you're growing from seed. You have to start planning and using a calendar to decide when you have to start these plants from seed. You also have to have the space in your house. All of us, all of my friends, we're just laughing at each other this year because the garden took over our living rooms, our dining rooms, our hallways, all of our plants that we had started from seed and trying to find shelving space for all of those. Is it worth it? Absolutely. I mean, look at all this behind me. Look at all this. A lot of this stuff came from seeds that I started in my house. Now, that being said, you absolutely don't have to start plants in your house to have a garden. You can plant so much outside, especially if you live in places like Oklahoma in the South, where you can plant even tomatoes outside in seed and have plenty of days till the end of harvest. Or you could even start them seed and be growing them from seed in pots outside and moving them in at night on cooler nights, that kind of thing. You can buy them from the nursery as starts. Now it's going to be a lot more expensive, but depending on the size of your garden, that might actually just be the way to go, especially when you're just getting going and you just want to get the hang of the garden. Maybe starting with starter plants is a better place because it's less overwhelm in the beginning. You're getting the plants, you're learning how to get them in the ground and just care for them then. And as you get better, then you can start from seed later on. It just kind of depends on your personality, what kind of person you are. When I started vegetable gardening, I started from seed. 14 years ago, I remember finding Seed Savers Exchange and doing all this research on all these plants. And I started this huge, amazing container vegetable garden from seed. That's how I started. And it was addictive. I couldn't stop. And every year from then, I always ordered my seeds, planned out when I was going to start them, had them in all the windowsills in my house. And I've just continued to grow, literally and figuratively, in my processes to the point that now I have all these shelves and grow lights and heat mats if I need them. But that's been a 14-year process of growing and learning of what works for me and what doesn't. So you kind of just have to decide what's your overwhelm level and be honest with yourself, because it can be really easy to buy too many seeds, start too many plants, and lose a lot before you even get them in the ground. Now, that's not to deter you from starting. It's just talk to someone like me maybe before you get going, and I can give you sort of an idea of how many plants you need to start with. But you do have to do some planning, especially if you're starting plants from seed. The other thing you have to consider time-wise is, again, if you're starting seeds in your house, you have to plan to water them, to keep them watered, to make sure they have enough light, to turn the lights off at the end of the day. Those are little things you have to consider. Once the weather starts warming up and you have to start hardening off your plants, taking them outside, bringing them inside every single day to get them hardened off and ready for the garden. That's more time. Totally worth it. And if you schedule it in your calendar, it does not have to be overwhelming at all. I promise. It sounds more overwhelming just talking about it, but heads up, you got to plan for those things. And then the actual garden, being in the garden, prepping the ground, depending on how you're doing a garden. Are you starting from bare ground, so you have to till it? Or is this a existing garden plot that you're building onto, which is what I love to do, lasagna gardening or no-till gardening, where you're adding on top of an existing garden plot with compost and dirt and straw and wood chips or whatever you have. All of that's going to take some time to get your gardens prepped for your seeds. And then, of course, getting your seeds or your starts in the ground. And then, of course, maintaining them. That's weeding the garden. I would say on a almost daily basis. If I was to tell you the best practices, whether you're working or not, is to go out in your garden every single day. Have your garden as close to your house as possible so it's not out of sight, out of mind, and go out there and just walk through your garden space once a day, pull a few weeds, check for a few pests, and just do a little bit of maintenance every day. It's going to go miles in the long run. And that kind of leads into the next thing about if you work, whether you work from home or whether you work out of the home, pick a time that works for you. Maybe it's early morning, first thing in the morning, going outside at the break of day, which is just an amazing time of the summer. My favorite time used to be just first thing in the morning, going out there when it's quiet, no one's up, and getting anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, depending on how much time you have. But you're going to have to build that into your calendar. Build that time into your calendar to plan for that, to be out in the garden for 15 minutes before you take your shower. You can do a lot in 15 minutes if you do it consistently every day or every other day. Or maybe it's when you come home from work. You're not quite ready to go in the house and start dinner. You can go out to the garden, walk around for 15 minutes, pull some weeds, harvest a few things, look for pests, whatever it is. Plan it in your schedule. Or maybe it's even after dinner. Bring the whole family out after dinner. It's fun to walk through the garden at that time of night when it's kind of cooled off and you can see what's going on. Have everyone pull some weeds and look for things that are ready to harvest. But whatever it is, you'll get into a rhythm, into a routine. But I just highly recommend kind of looking at your schedule and your calendar and figuring out how you can fit in whatever amount of time you have. So I would say, how much time do I have a day realistically to spend out in the garden? I have 30 minutes a day. So for 6 to 7 days a week, that's going to give you at least 3 hours in the garden, roundabouts. So you can kind of figure how much time you have to put into your garden, which then can help you determine maybe how big of a garden you want to have. I would say for this garden, I'm probably out here at least hour a day, maybe more, depending on how my kids are doing, if Violet's asleep or awake. I would say I definitely put in 10 hours a week in this garden. And I do have helpers, and that's really helpful, and we'll get to that in a minute with the kids. But I knew I would have that time, and I allotted for that time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had a garden this big because I have to maintain it. I have to be out here pulling weeds and pruning plants, obviously harvesting. If there's pests, then I've got to start, kind of dealing with the pests. And then even in the house, I'm not even accounting for the time of processing food, whether it's canning or freezing or cutting or chopping or washing or putting away. That's all time too that you have to account for, is the time in the kitchen once you start bringing your food in. So again, just be realistic with how much time you can put in a week, not only in your garden, but in your kitchen with whatever you harvest. Is it worth it? Absolutely. I'm going to keep telling you, absolutely, totally worth all the effort. And here's something to think about before we move into working with kids. It's for a season, especially if you live somewhere like Michigan, that's a really short summer season. It's like 3 months of intensive gardening. And that doesn't mean that's all I've done all summer. We've definitely taken trips and done fun things and gone swimming and gone to the lake and been with friends. But there is this intensive time in the summer of being in the garden and harvesting and pruning and maintaining and processing food. And then fall comes, and then winter. And it's that's when you rest and you gear up and get ready for the next season. So, I kind of keep that in mind. I'm doing a lot of work right now, but that's part of this season. And then the next season will come in and it'll be more of a moving into rest season. But that's what I know my summers are going to be. Now, if gardening with kids is what's holding you back, don't let it. Why don't y'all come sit over here? So I've gardened since I've been married, which means always had babies in tow, always had children in tow, and it absolutely can be overwhelming sometimes. And it absolutely can be amazing and wonderful. And you just kind of have to choose, how do I want to say this? It's important for me to teach my kids the habit of gardening and growing your own food. I am hoping that they all love gardening and this is something that they want to do with their lives as they grow up. But that's not guaranteed. But I at least want them to have the experience. And it's healthy for them too. It's healthy for them to be outside and working and learning to get along and to work, to do something with their hands. But there's been times where even my husband has to encourage me that even if the process is slower, more frustrating, that it's worth it to have them with me. Because generally, it can go two ways. They can either be super helpful and help you to get more done, like this morning. They was very helpful, helping me dig up potatoes and having more hands.
And doing games?
Doing beans. We played games while we harvested the corn. That was fun. It was fun. I've told them, like, I love having them in the garden with me, especially at this age when they're older and you can chat while you're doing it, or you can laugh, or you can sing songs. I feel like a couple of weeks ago we were outside singing Sound of Music songs together. You know, that's fun. But there are absolutely frustrating times when they're arguing and bickering, or they're too hot or they're too cold. I have one child that the weather is never right for him. It's always too hot or so too cold. But it's still giving them the skill, and it's still being together and doing this together, and that's really important. And so you have to kind of look at the long haul picture of what's important to you down the road, and even now. What are you building in your family? What are you building in your kids? And I told them I would bring them on camera if they want, just to say what they love about gardening, and even what they don't love. You can say, like, what is your least favorite part and what's your most favorite part? What do you think? Iced coffee. What do you think, Maddie? Maddie loves the garden. Sometimes she kind of gets distracted by cats and butterflies and bugs and worms, but
getting dirty.
She loves getting dirty. Okay, what else? You can wait your turn.
There's no more left. Picking flowers.
Picking flowers.
Being distracted.
Being distracted.
No, not my worst part. I don't have a worst part.
Okay. So this morning, what did we harvest that was fun?
Potatoes. Corn.
Potatoes are fun.
Corn's the best.
Potatoes. Corn was fun. What's your least favorite part? And you can be honest.
Being out in the hot
The
weather.
work.
I have fun being out.
Tell me, or tell my garden friends, what's your favorite part about the garden?
The food.
The food. You love harvesting. Charlie loves going through the garden and looking for ripe tomatoes and ripe peppers. You love doing that. Mm-hmm. Yep. What's your least favorite part? And you can be honest.
I'm scared that the bees are gonna sting me.
Scared the bees are gonna sting you. Hold on, Maddie.
I really like the taste of the food.
The taste of the food. That's important. Good tasting food. Yeah. So why don't you tell me and everyone else watching, what's your favorite thing about the garden, and also your least favorite thing? What do you think?
My favorite thing would be
Look at the camera.
collecting potatoes.
Potatoes.
And definitely eating the beans, definitely. And then the pickle beans.
What's your least favorite?
Probably,
Does it get hot sometimes?
yeah,
And do you get tired?
yes,
Yeah.
that's
Sometimes even though we're having fun harvesting potatoes, you get hot and tired, right?
yeah,
Yeah, but it's definitely fun when we get to eat all the food, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Kenley, tell me your favorite part about gardening and your least favorite part. And if you're not serious, I'm gonna take you off camera. Come on.
My favorite is doing the planting and the harvesting. And my least favorite is the work and working when it's hot out.
Okay, that's completely
I also
understandable. Sorry.
I also like working with Mom.
Yes.
Same.
It's fun. When we work together, it is really fun. I absolutely agree with that.
And
So time, you gotta plan for it, you gotta account for it. If you grow a huge garden that you're not gonna be able to spend time in, that's gonna be really frustrating to watch money and food go down the drain. So you've gotta be realistic about your time And so I always say start small. Pick your favorite plants, your favorite foods. So we'll say tomatoes, peppers, and zucchini, and start with those. Or start with the things that you know that your family will eat a lot of. Beans, tomatoes, potatoes. Potatoes are so easy and they're so fun for kids to harvest. Pick your top 5 and start with those. If you're a little bit more seasoned gardener, then go to Baker Creek Seeds. I think it's rareseeds.com, or Seed Savers Exchange, or Botanical Interests, or what's one of my other favorite ones? I just blanked. I'll have to put it in the notes. And check out some of their fun varieties, but like have blinds on because you're going to want to buy everything. So hang on, buddy.
What did you do?
Hold on, buddy. So set a limit for yourself. I'm going to buy 2 varieties of each of my 5 favorite plants. And because the thing is that you're going to have a lot of those seeds the next season. I still have seeds from 3 years ago. And so every year I'm actually buying less and less seeds because I'm either saving my seeds from plants that I like, or I have seeds left over from the prior year. So it's really easy to spend a lot of money and buy way more seeds than you need to, and it's fun. But I suggest if you have friends that garden, that you guys all get different things and then have a seed trading day. We did that this past year. I got together with several people and we traded seeds, and that way we weren't spending a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of seeds going to waste, and then we could each try different varieties, or plan on one person growing this variety of tomato and you growing the other variety. There's just different ways to do it. It's just really easy to spend too much time and spend money on seeds that you're either gonna not have time to plant or harvest, or just be way too overwhelming in the garden. And every year that you do it, you're gonna figure out what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. I'm trying to think of a plant that I decided really wasn't worth my time. I don't know if there is one. But I've learned over the years which tomato varieties really serve me well, that I need more of, and which ones I really need less of. You know, I definitely love all different kinds of cherry tomatoes because those are so fun for fresh eating and for salads and for the kids. And then I love the really meaty tomatoes for making sauces and canned tomatoes and things like that. Those are the 2 that I want a lot of. And then I'll just do a couple varieties of more of the fresh eating tomatoes, because you're just not going to be able to eat that much unless you're giving them away or selling them or trying to can them. And the fresh eating ones are harder to can unless they're like your paste tomatoes. And then I also have learned over the years which peppers I need a lot more of. I definitely have learned that I want more of the spicy ones for canning and for drying to turn into cayenne pepper. Lots of bell peppers, because not that many grow on a plant. So you need lots of plants to be able to get a lot of bell peppers that you can either eat fresh or freeze for down the road. So every year you're going to gain that knowledge of what kind of beans you like, what kind of beans you don't like. Do you like growing pole beans, or would you rather grow bush beans? Do you like this kind of tomato? Like, I'm not a fan of the saladette tomato. It's like the ones that are like the 2 and 3 ounce tomato. I'm not a huge fan of those. They're kind of end up just being a waste. So I like the big ones, or I like the meaty ones for sauce, and the cherry tomatoes. I've really learned that. So every year you're going to gain that knowledge of what you need less of, what you need more of, and you'll probably end up buying less and less seeds because you'll figure that out in the process too. But the long and short of what I would say to someone is absolutely, in whatever context you can, grow a garden. Absolutely. Start as small as a container garden and grow as big as a 3,000 to 10,000 square foot garden. It's totally worth it. But you got to be honest with yourself. What are your goals? Are you growing food for the majority of the year? Are you growing food just for the summer months? Are you doing it just to be outside and get fresh air? I mean, what are your long-term goals? That's going to really also help determine how much you grow and how much time you're going to spend in the garden. I know there are days where I don't want to be processing food, but my long-term goal is to put away as much food as I can to really cut money off of our grocery budget in the next year. So it's totally worth it to me to spend a lot of time canning and freezing and chopping and shredding all this food, totally worth it because of the goals that my husband and I have set. And that's really the motivating factor, is the goal of having all this food that we can use and utilize throughout the winter and into even next summer. And then also just the health benefits of being outside, the vitamin D, the sunshine, the dirt. Just, this is such a healthy practice. I don't even exercise in the summer because I'm getting so much physical activity out in the garden. There's like no point. I save my exercise routines and videos for the winter months. And then just the time with your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's your kids. It's been really fun having Matt in the garden this year and his efforts. That's been really fun as a married couple. You know, his jobs are different than mine when it comes to the garden. He's more the infrastructure and the tilling the ground and the heavy weight. And I'm more of the, you know, the maintenance and the pruning and yada, yada, yada. So my kids and I are going to go swimming, so I got to cut this thing short.
Bye.
But I would say put your questions, your comments, your thoughts down below, and we can start this conversation. But absolutely do a garden. Pick your top 5 vegetables to start with. Assess your time. How much time do you have a week? How much do you have time to dedicate a day? And what are your long-term goals for the garden? That's really going to help you determine how big or small you should go. So get in the garden. That's my final word. It's so worth it. All right, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.